Not even half a year since its release, Teamfight Tactics has seen its first major update in the form of a new season. Fans of the game may note a few minor changes. First, let's talk about champions. While some champions from Season 1 made the cut and moved on to Season 2 with some new flair, the majority of the roster was changed. Let's get on the list real quick. Diana, Lux, Vagar, Brand, Rek'Sai, Sion, Master Yi, Nika, Vladimir, Janna, Ezreal, Zyra, Ornn, Fight. So, you may be thinking, how do all these new champions fit into TFT's roles? Well, the short answer is, they don't. But that's a perfect transition to the next segment, Champion Origins. And though it was a good question, I'd like to ask that all further questions be held until the end of the presentation. Thank you. The new batch of champions brought with them a new set of origins and buffs that can be obtained by adding them to your team. I would list them off, but honestly, I'm still catching my breath from that list of champions. So here, have a picture instead. Just like with Season 1, many champions come equipped with specific skins to help them meld into their new roles. After all, they don't want to be shunned and outcast by their new friends. For example, Diana, Varus, and Zyra are all classified as Inferno units, and as such, are sporting their Infernal and Wildfire skins. Let's see. What was next? Let me check my notes real quick. Oh, item changes. The changes to our item sets weren't quite as drastic as the champion roster update. The main changes being the spatula items, obviously to adjust to the new roles. I don't know what else you want from me, that's all I've got on the items. Finally, the big one, changes to the board itself. When you load up the game, you'll immediately notice the emblem of an element, be it Infernal, Mountain, Ocean, or Cloud, much like the Drakes in normal League, appear in the center of the Ring of Champions during the opening draft. Keep this element in mind, as the moment you set foot onto your personal arena, a single hex will be chosen and upgraded, so to speak. Dependent on the element, any unit you place that starts a round within this hex will have one of their item slots taken up by a new buff. An Infernal Hex grants an additional 30% attack speed buff, a Mountain Hex adds 30 HP to the unit's health pool. Oh, almost forgot to mention, you see this? You see this thing right here? Let me let you in on a little secret. It stacks infinitely. An Ocean Hex gives 30 mana at the beginning of the round, and a Cloud Hex bestows 30% dodge chance. As the game progresses, a second Hex will be upgraded to also grant that game's elemental buff. Keep in mind when deciding which units to buff though, as your enemies will receive their buffs in the same corresponding hexes on their arena. Be careful you don't put a squishy unit in harm's way. After all, you want them to make good use of that buff. The element chosen at the beginning of the game doesn't just affect your board, however. You may have heard in my ramblings earlier that two new additions to the TFT roster are Qiyana and Lux. These units don't inherently fit within an elemental role like the rest of the gang. Qiyana will always be an assassin by nature, but her secondary role is determined by the board's element. For example, if the board is granting you the mountain buff, Qiyana will fit within the mountain role. Lux is a little bit more difficult to explain though. While also being the only unit in the avatar role, there's also a Lux of each element in the champion pool. On the chance that you manage to find and pull the one you need to complete your team, however, each remaining Lux you encounter in the pool will adjust their role just for you. As you can see on screen, I have an Inferno Lux on my team. Therefore, the Lux I find in my shop, whatever element it may have held before, appears to me as another Inferno. Whatever element it was before, I hope that guy didn't need it, otherwise he might be a tad salty with me. And with that, I think we've covered all the major changes and given you enough information to head out onto the battlefield with confidence that you can do this. If you've played TFT for a while, you'll be quite familiar with this, but if you're new, don't be discouraged if a game or two doesn't work out. You have no idea how many games I ended up losing just because the shop really wasn't on my side. But I kept going. And though I may have faced more failure than I'd like to admit, every now and then, a victory might just fall into your lap. Keep fighting, summoners. I'll see you in the arena.